I am Yara Whitfield, 36 years old, a former Naval Special Warfare officer turned quiet investigator of my own past. I earned a call sign I never asked for, Shadow Vesper, because I learned to move where the light fails and the truth hides. Today I am not hiding. I am seated in a Pentagon briefing room that smells like cold air and floor wax, a room lined with flags and framed mottos about honor that do not mention cost. Across from me sits Chief Judge Advocate Harrison Cole, the man who once smiled while my name was dragged like a sack across the courtroom floor. He lifts a stapled report and waves it like a flag over a conquered city, then laughs. A thin, bright sound designed to humiliate. He says, "This is classified. You would not understand." The stenographer keeps typing even though she flinches. Cameras are barred. Reputations are not. Thumbnail words unspool inside my head like they were burned into my memory. Pentagon briefing room. The judge waved the report, laughing. "This is classified. You wouldn't understand." I slid a folder across the table. His smile froze. "Where did you get this?" I had the original, unredacted proof, the truth that ended his career. I'm here to tell you how it happened. I slide a black folder across the glossy table. No drama, just the distance between what happened and what was written. Cole opens it with 2 careful fingers. Color drains from his face the way tide pulls back from rock. He stops laughing. The room hears silence spread like frost. "Where did you get this?" he whispers, voice dry. His ring clicks against the metal edge of the chair. He is measuring whether to deny or threaten. He is late to both. "From the same place you buried Silverfish," I say. The air changes. A colonel near the door shifts his weight. A young aide stops writing. Cole glances toward the back row, where a man from Renard Vale's office watches with a face that tries very hard to be plain. I narrate for the record. The unredacted proof shows the mission packet as it was before the edits. Real satellite frames, real timestamps, the civilian grid notated in red, and the approval chain that should have protected 6 Americans who did not come back. My voice is even feels like steel. Cole tries to recover. He lifts the stapled report again, the censored one. He says the words he has always used: process, privilege, national security. I let them pass. Truth is not allergic to procedure. It only takes longer to arrive. "Counselor," I say, because he loves titles. "Read page 3, line 12. He reads. The language is plain. The coordinates were altered inside the legal office. The alteration arrived minutes before final authorization. He does not look at me. He stares at the table as if it might open and deliver him. I remember the gavel he slammed at my tribunal when he called me weak. I remember how his voice filled the room. Here he has no gavel, only paper, only ink. I let the silence grow until it has weight. Then I add what he fears. There are 3 copies. 2 are off-site. 1 is already logged with oversight. The aide in the back stands. The man from Vale's office does not move. He simply inhales, slow. Cole swallows. He says, "Commander Whitfield, this is a misunderstanding." I answer, "It is a record." My hands are calm on the table, left palm scar forward. The scar tingles when the past is close. A clock ticks. Somewhere outside, a phone vibrates against a desk. In my head, I count breaths the way I did on long dives. The first breath is for the living. The second is for the dead. The third is for the truth that keeps both honest. I raise my eyes and meet his. "We will proceed," I say. And we do. Cole leans back as if distance could dilute evidence. He asks who authorized my access. I answer with policy. Lawful whistleblower channel. Counsel present. Chain of custody preserved. Every phrase is a tool. I sharpened them for years. He lifts a hand toward the door. The guard stays where he is. Orders have not been given. Power wobbles when facts refuse to kneel. I picture 6 faces. Sunburnt. Laughing before wheels up. Men who trusted a packet that should have been clean. I do not say their names yet. I carry them quietly. Cole clears his throat. "If you release this, you endanger operations." I nod once. "What you released endangered families." My words do not rise. They land. The chair creaks, an honest sound. "Now, My name was nearly erased once. I learned to keep my own record. After the tribunal where I spoke Shadow Vesper and watched a gavel slip from a hand that had condemned me, Admiral Marlowe found me at Arlington beneath a sky as polished as metal. We stood among white stones that lean like disciplined shoulders. She warned that scabs without cleansing breed rot. Cole is not finished, she told me. He stepped back because he was told to step back. Someone larger prefers him where he is. Quiet, useful. Her voice did not tremble. She had buried enough to talk plainly. I asked the question I had promised myself never to stop asking. Who kept the door open for him? Marlowe did not give me a name, not yet. She gave me a line of ink, a date beside a procurement code, a ghost company with a patriotic title and no office, a ribbon of money that curled through a storm of contracts before vanishing into an account that never sleeps. She gave me permission, not to break rules, to read them for fingerprints. The next 48 hours were work with the sound turned low. I mapped a chain, case files from regions that do not like outsiders, calm summaries that repeated the same convenient error, redactions that covered nouns but not verbs. Enough for pattern recognition if you are cruel to wishful thinking. In the center of the map sat Silverfish, not just a ruined operation but an opportunity for someone. The altered coordinates placed my team where someone else needed noise. The noise covered a transfer that moved components and cash. I learned the outline before I learned the title. Reynard Vale's office appeared like a watermark at the edges. Not a signature, a pressure point. When Cole resurfaced at the Pentagon as a legal brain with clean hands, that watermark turned darker. He had friends. They owned paper shredders and reputations. Marlowe arranged a pretext, a review of legacy legal matters where the presence of the former defendant would be useful for context. I signed a disclosure that read like a trap and kept a copy. I prepared the only way I trust. I checked clocks, I checked doors. I wrote what I knew on a yellow pad, and then tried to break it. Where it did not break, I loaded it into that black folder. People like to imagine a heroic rush. I prefer preparation. I ironed a suit, polished shoes, tucked my dog tags into a pocket. In the mirror, I looked older than the last time Cole met me. I was. Age is not the number of years, but the number of reports you can read after midnight without tasting blood. On the morning of the meeting, I parked far from the entrance and walked. I counted cameras. I watched the pattern of badges at the security line. Which hands shook? Which eyes drifted? Who pretended I was not there? A sergeant at the elevator recognized my scar and did not ask. That silence was a gift. It meant he knew enough to respect wounds and not enough to betray. In my head, I rehearsed names, 6 of them. A litany I repeat before any new room. I do not pray. I inventory. It steadies me better than any benediction. I remembered our last morning on the airstrip. Coffee that tasted like burnt courage. A joke about sand that has no edges. A photograph someone promised to send and never did because phones died before people did. The elevator opened into a hall bright enough to imitate mercy. An assistant led me past sealed doors to a conference room that had seen marriages, divorces, promotions, and cover-ups. I sat where I could see the exit and the clock. 10 minutes later, Cole entered. He did not look surprised. Surprise is for the unprepared. He looked convinced. Conviction makes better liars. He held up a report printed on heavy paper. He let it flutter. He laughed in that thin way that means to erode you. Classified Shadow Vesper. You would not understand. The line was theater. The audience had been chosen. My job was to change the script and keep the tone. I slid the folder when his knuckles whitened from holding power too tightly. He opened it. He paled. He asked the ritual question. Where did you get this? From the same place he buried Silverfish. From the night we carried civilians through a hallway painted with dust and fire. From the promises that died and the paperwork that lied. I was there, so I am here. The reverse beat ends when the present begins. I lifted my eyes. Ready. Present tense returns like a tide. The room is cold enough to keep nerves sharp. Cole breathes through his mouth. The representative from Reynard Vale's office sits in the back row. Gray suit, neutral tie, a posture that says both witness and warning. He does not touch a pen. He just watches the way a sniper watches wind. I file that away. Men who never write often order others to. Cole closes the unredacted packet and sets it down as if it might stain. Commander Whitfield, he says, this forum is not an evidentiary hearing. I nod. It is a beginning. The stenographer keeps typing. The air unit ticks. Somewhere behind the wall, a copier starts and stops. Bureaucracy keeps breathing, even when truth walks in. I speak for the record. These pages establish chain of custody failures, document edits, and an authorization altered inside the legal office within 6 minutes of final sign-off. They corroborate field recollections sworn under oath after Operation Silverfish. I hold back the photographs. Cole tries to shape the narrative. He cites precedent. He asks whether I accessed secure materials outside my lane. The question is a trap disguised as a hallway. I step aside, not into it. I use protected channels with counsel under oversight authority. The words are boring. Boredom is armor. Excitement is what gets people punished. Vale's man finally speaks. His voice is soft enough to make everyone lean in. Who provided you with these originals? Not a question about truth. A question about sources, the one they prefer. I hold his eyes. Multiple lawful channels, cross-verified. He tilts his head, a hawk that has not decided. He wants me reckless. I leave him hungry. A major at the end of the table shifts the topic. What is Silverfish? Cole answers too quickly. An internal code name of no relevance. His haste tastes like fear. The major looks to me. I say, it is relevance. My hands rest flat on the table. Scars up, a quiet testimony. Silverfish is why 6 Americans do not sit here today. The room divides. Some tilt toward me, some toward Cole, most toward safety. I keep my tone even. This is not about punishing a single official. It is about ending a practice that treats accuracy as optional when money and prestige are at stake. Vale's man blinks. Cole goes procedural again. Motion, jurisdiction, proper venue. I let him stack words until they wheeze. Then I say the line I brought for him. Read the margin initials on page 4. He does. There are letters there that do not belong to him. The letters are familiar to anyone who has read procurement summaries for long enough. The room hears the hinge creak. He senses the trap and shifts his chair. We can recess, he offers. He wants time to call the back room where stories are warmed and served. I answer. We can proceed. The aide lifts a phone but does not dial. An order must be clear. I do not look away from Cole. I want him to feel solitude visit early. I glance at the clock. 26 minutes since we began. In 26 minutes, you can lose a unit or save a life. You can also move a story from rumor to record. I ask that the time be marked. Rhythm matters. Light in the room feels harder now, metallic. I think about my father at the courthouse. I let it pass. This is larger than you, counselor, I say, and for the first time he does not correct the title. And larger than me. He stares as if staring could reverse ink. It cannot. We will need additional parties present, he says finally. Bring them, I answer. Bring all of them. He nods to the guard. The door opens. Colder air slides in. Voices gather outside. I watch the representative again. The crease near his temple deepens when I say chain of custody. That detail matters. Men in rooms like this pretend not to care about process until process can cage them. The crease is a tell. He has seen cages. A captain 2 seats down slides a glass toward me. I leave it untouched. Control is the thirst I indulge here. My posture stays measured, shoulders squared, chin, voice steady. In my chest 6 names settle, not heavy, anchored. The conflict is set. The room knows it. I can hear its heart. The moment I stepped out of that briefing room, the lights of the Pentagon hallway felt harsher, the air heavier. Cole's frozen expression was still vivid in my mind, but I knew that one reaction wasn't enough to bring him down. I needed more than the unredacted proof. I needed the web it connected to. Silverfish. The name still carried weight in my head, the way an unfinished mission haunts you in your sleep. In the Navy, we'd been trained to trace supply lines backward, find the choke point, cut it, and watch the rest collapse. That's what I intended to do here. I started with the metadata embedded in the original file. Hidden in the margins was a procurement trail, shell companies layered like armor, designed to throw off anyone without the patience to peel them back. But I had patience, and I had time. 2 nights later, in a secure workspace, miles away from official eyes, I hit the first break. A subcontract dated 18 months ago, signed by a logistics company I'd never heard of, operating out of a coastal town with no port. A ghost business. I dug deeper. The registered agent's name was a dead man, officially deceased 3 years prior. The signature didn't match his old records, but the company's bank transactions told a different story. Payments routed to an overseas account in the same quarter Cole had stepped back from public duty after the fallout in the Vail case. The timing was perfect. Too perfect to be coincidence. That was the link. A direct transaction from this ghost company to a special operations unit stationed in a region where silverfish technology had gone missing 6 months before. And the authorization code for that transfer? It was embedded in the same formatting style I'd seen in Cole's Pentagon memos years earlier. He wasn't just aware of the pipeline. He was still running it from the shadows. I leaned back in my chair, the hum of the secure server filling the silence. The contract was signed by the logistics company, but the funding authorization came through a line item buried in a foreign aid package. I'd seen that trick before. Camouflage a weapons transfer under infrastructure support. It was the oldest shell game in military procurement, just dressed in modern accounting language. But what made my chest tighten was the second name on the file, a liaison from Vail's corporate security division. Reynard Vail's reach wasn't just corporate anymore. He had men inside the Pentagon's supply chain. And if Vail was involved, then Cole wasn't the mastermind. He was the operator, which meant taking him down wouldn't end the program. I printed the relevant pages, locking them in a black case only I could open. If anyone saw these before I was ready, the entire investigation would collapse, and I'd be next on their list. Marlowe's voice echoed in my head from that night after the first trial. Yara, these people don't stop because you catch them once. They stop when they decide you're too expensive to fight. Well, I intended to make this fight very expensive. The next morning, I walked into an old contact's office, a Navy intelligence analyst who owed me more than a favor. I slid a single page across his desk, just enough for him to understand I wasn't chasing a ghost. He read in silence, jaw tightening. If you're right, he said quietly, this ties Silverfish to an active black program. The kind that gets buried so deep, not even a Senate inquiry can reach it. Then we don't go through the Senate, I replied. We go where their chain of custody breaks. It was risky. But the trail was clear now. Cole had used Vail's shell network to move stolen tech through a deniable military channel. And every timestamp matched his so-called retirement from the fallout in Part 1. The man hadn't been sidelined. He'd been redeployed. When I left that office, the air felt different. Not lighter, but charged. I knew I was walking a narrow edge. Too much exposure and I'd be shut down. Too little, and they'd vanish before I could act. One thing was certain. Cole knew I had the unredacted file. It was only a matter of time before Vail knew too. And once they connected the dots, the hunt would turn both ways. Marlowe called me 2 nights later. The line was clean, but his voice carried the kind of weight that made you check the locks twice. Yara, he said, I can't be seen standing next to you right now. Vail's got his hands around the Military Oversight Committee. If I even breathe in your direction in public, they'll cut my legs out. I figured as much, I replied. But that means I'm running this solo. Not exactly, he said. There's someone you need to meet. Former CIA Deep Operations. He used to work under Cole before things got murky. He's not clean, but he's not loyal to Cole anymore. And he's useful. The word useful in Marlowe's mouth was never casual. It meant dangerous in both directions. His name was Daniel Kessler. We met in the kind of diner that still had cracked vinyl booths and a waitress who called everyone Han. He sat in the back, facing the door, posture loose, but eyes locked on me the second I walked in. Whitfield, he said, not offering a hand. I hear you're looking to burn down a house you can't even see yet. And you're here because you've got a map, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. He smirked. A map, sure, but maps don't tell you where the landmines are. We danced around each other for 20 minutes, trading pieces of the puzzle without showing the full picture. Kessler had intel on Vale's shell companies that didn't come from any database. It was the kind of detail you got from being in the same room when the money moved. He spoke in fragments, never giving a whole sentence when half would do. Like a man rationing his oxygen. But there was something else. Every time I steered the conversation toward Cole's current channels, he shifted. Not to dodge, but to assess me. He was measuring what I knew and what I might do with it. Finally, he leaned in. Cole isn't your endgame. Vale isn't either. You want Silverfish dead, you have to kill the pipeline, not the operators. That means getting into the offshore vault. I didn't blink. You know where it is? He smiled like a man who'd just been given permission to lie. I know someone who can get you close, but if you want that name, you'll owe me. And I don't take IOUs lightly. Marlowe's warning echoed in my mind. He's not clean. Kessler slid a napkin across the table, folded twice. Read it once, burn it. Don't call the number, they'll call you. I slipped it into my jacket without looking. Why are you helping me? I asked. He tilted his head. Because Cole left me out in the cold. Because Vale thinks I'm dead weight. And because you're just reckless enough to make this interesting. The waitress refilled our coffee, and for a moment, it was just another quiet night in a nowhere diner. But I knew the second I walked out, the clock would start ticking. Back in my car, I unfolded the napkin. A single name. No number, no location. Just a name I hadn't heard in years. Someone who had vanished after the last Silverfish operation went sideways. If Kessler was telling the truth, this contact could open doors I didn't even know existed. If he was lying, I was about to walk straight into a trap. Either way, the next move was mine. The name Kessler gave me was still burning in my pocket when I stepped out of that diner. 2 nights later, it became the key I needed to get close to the Pentagon's off-grid storage node, a place they called the Peripheral Archive. It wasn't part of the main server farm. That was the point. The archive lived in a sealed sub-level behind 3 different security protocols and handled material too sensitive to circulate even among cleared staff. To get in, you needed not just clearance, but the right operational context. That meant appearing on paper as if you belonged to an active Black Ops logistics sweep, one that didn't actually exist. The contact, a woman named Harper, was the one who made that happen. She didn't ask what I was after. She just gave me a set of credentials, built around a phantom project, and told me I had a 3-hour window before the system pinged the absence of a matching physical tasking order. Walking into the Pentagon with those credentials felt like carrying a live charge in my pocket. I wore my service blues, hair pinned tight, expression set to neutral authority. At the first checkpoint, the guard scanned my badge and glanced at the display. Whatever Harper had built into the metadata, it worked. He waved me through. 2 more doors, 2 more layers of scrutiny. At the final station, a biometric pad waited. I placed my hand flat, pulse steady. A green light bloomed. The last lock slid back with a sound like a vault opening. Inside, the archive was colder than I expected. The air kept low to preserve the drives. Rows of sealed racks stood under dim, humming lights. I moved quickly, Harper's breadcrumb trail on my tablet guiding me to a node labeled Special Asset Logistics, Q4 Internal. That was the camouflage for what I was really after, the Silverfish subcontract ledger. My gloves whispered over the console keys. The file structure was nested deep, 3 layers into a compartment labeled Joint Special Liaison. There it was, transaction logs, vendor contracts, and a single PDF marked non-redacted master. I mirrored the data to a secure drive hidden in the lining of my jacket. The transfer was halfway through when the hum changed. A faint tick in the ventilation system, followed by the barely audible chirp of an active trace sweep. My stomach tightened. Someone in the building had initiated a security verification routine. That meant they were checking for unauthorized access in real time. The drive hit 90%. I forced my breathing to stay slow, eyes on the progress bar. If I pulled out early, the copy would be incomplete. If I stayed, I might not walk out. 100%. I ejected the drive, slid it into the hidden pocket, and wiped the access log with a single keystroke. The console blinked once, then went dark. I left the aisle and headed for the exit. My steps were measured, but my ears tracked the sound of approaching boots on polished concrete. A voice barked down the corridor, muffled but sharp. Hold that floor, nobody moves until clearance is confirmed. Vertical spike. That's what it felt like, every nerve firing upward. I pivoted, ducking into a maintenance passage I'd clocked on the way in. It was narrow, lit only by the red glow of an emergency strip. I moved fast, counting turns. Footsteps grew louder, the comm in my ear crackled. Harper's voice, tight and urgent. 2 minutes, Yara. If you're not out before then, the sweep locks every exit. I reached a service hatch, scanned the override Harper had embedded in my badge, and dropped into a dim storage bay, one level up from the loading docks. From there, it was a straight shot to an unmarked freight elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of 2 security officers entering the bay I'd just left. One of them turned toward me, eyes narrowing, but the doors shut before he could speak. By the time I stepped out onto the ground floor, my pulse had steadied. My jacket still held the drive. The archive was sealed again behind me. And somewhere in the building, an internal trace team was wondering how a ghost had just walked through their most secure wing and vanished. I didn't need them to have answers. I just needed them to keep looking the wrong way. The elevator released me into a corridor washed in fluorescent haze. My jacket felt heavier than fabric because the drive nestled inside it had weight you cannot measure. I kept my pace measured and my breathing quiet. I had learned long ago that panic is a kind of noise. Outside, winter light flattened the parking lot. I reached my car. The phone in the console vibrated once. Unknown sender, no subject. The image resolved slowly, then hit hard. It was my mother's house, white siding, blue trim. The porch swing she loved replaced after the funeral by an identical one because grief craves replicas. In the frame, Evelyn Hart, my mother's oldest friend and the caretaker of the property, stepped onto the porch with a grocery bag. Across the image someone had typed, "Stand down, or she is next." My hands did not shake. Training is a language the body speaks when fear arrives. I locked the screen, counted to 5, unlocked it again, checked metadata. Timestamp matched the last 10 minutes. The threat was fresh. A second file followed. A live location ping from a device across the street, disguised as a delivery tracker. The sender wanted me to know they could watch and reach. Not theory, capability. I called Marlowe on the hardened line. He answered on the first ring. I described the image, the porch, Evelyn, the caption. He exhaled once, a short sound that meant he was already moving pieces. "You cannot return there," he said. "I am dispatching a quiet team, unmarked, no lights. We will relocate Evelyn under a protective pretext." I said yes, then added the part he did not want. "Escalation is coming." I drove, not to the house, but to a secure garage where the air smells like rubber and dust. My mother is gone. Her house remains, a shrine that refuses to learn silence. Evelyn waters the roses, keeps the porch swept, reads on Sundays with a blanket and tea. The message was not really about her, it was about me. Hurt what you love, force you to choose, force you to stop. I do not stop. I plan. I sent a single text to Evelyn, a code we had agreed on after the tribunal. She replied with the word garden, which meant she would follow instructions without questions. Marlowe's details scooped her within the hour. They used a maintenance van and a broken water main as cover. I watched from 2 blocks away. Headlights sliding, silhouettes brief and professional. A choreography built from caution. When the van turned out of sight, I replied to the anonymous thread with a single sentence. "You have one chance to stay out of prison." The read receipt flashed. Then a new image arrived. Not the house this time, my car, taken from somewhere behind me. Time-stamped 30 seconds earlier. The caption read, "You are not the only one who plans." My heartbeat ticked once, then steadied. Training reclaimed the wheel. The style was veil, not the words themselves, but the angle of pressure. He likes proximity. He likes to touch a nerve and then withdraw before you can name the sensation. Cold bludgeons, veil, threads. Their partnership works because fear wears 2 faces. The second ping proved what I needed. Surveillance in place, confidence high, arrogance higher. People who believe they are untouchable forget how many doors a quiet key can open. I pivoted from defense to offense. The drive from the archive went into a dead drop, with a timed release to 2 oversight attorneys, and 1 journalist who still believed facts could matter. If I vanished or went dark for more than 4 hours, the packet would move. I copied a subset to a burner and kept it on me, bait for their impatience. The rest I memorized: dates, amounts, initials. I parked 3 streets over and walked until the night took the glare off my thoughts. The fear wanted my hands. I did not give it permission. I touched the scar in my palm, felt the old heat of the wall where shrapnel kissed me, and chose to miss the artery. 6 names formed a circle around me, not to trap, to guard. Silverfish began with edits. It will end with signatures. I texted Harper a location and a time. Then I messaged Kessler a single word: proceed. We would not run from the threat. We would route around it. Evelyn was safe, for now. I wanted Vale to believe I had paused. Meanwhile, the dead drops clock kept ticking toward sunlight. The game had changed shape, not politics. Family, not theory. Porch light and grocery bag. I have never walked away from that. Shadow Vesper moves forward, not louder, only closer, until fear blinks first and yields to me. They convened the internal hearing in a windowless chamber built to make truth feel small. I arrived with my counsel and a black binder. Cole sat opposite beneath a brass seal. 2 rows of officers flanked us. A red light blinked on the recorder. The chair stated the purpose: review of procedural irregularities. Scope limited to legal process. Fine. Process is where liars trip. Today, process finally met its credible witness. Cole opened with theater. He raised a thin packet. The sanitized report he waved in the briefing room. He let it hang like a warning. Classified, he said. Unauthorized possession will be addressed. His tone aimed past me, at the record. I waited to be recognized, then opened my binder. I slid forward the unredacted master and the ledger from the peripheral archive. Chain of custody sheets on top, signatures clean, timestamps intact. For the record, I said, these are originals obtained through lawful channels, mirrored to oversight, sealed copies lodged with counsel. My voice stayed neutral. Neutrality makes edges sharp. Cole objected. He wanted the documents struck. He wanted closed session rules to swallow them. The chair considered, asked me to explain provenance without disclosing sources. I summarized the access grant, whistleblower protections, forensic markers that matched the legal office terminals used the night Silverfish was greenlit. I added 1 sentence, page 3, line 12. The chair read, brows tightening. I described Silverfish without adjectives. Coastal strike, civilian grid of 28 souls. Coordinates altered 6 minutes before final authorization. 6 American operators dead. Civilians evacuated by my team against the altered order. I did not say betrayal. The pages said it. The room cooled. Cole tried the old broom, the word classified sweeping blood under a rug. Operational details are outside this body's competence, he said. We are here to discuss legal process, not after-action folklore. He smiled, thin, professional. Commander Whitfield has personal grievances. The law does not heal grief. I kept my hands flat, scar forward. The law records facts, I said. These are facts, edits, initials, transfers. The pipeline moved equipment and money under the cover of legal reviews. Those reviews occurred in offices you controlled. I looked at the second row. When law is used as camouflage, it ceases to be law. A captain near the wall cleared his throat. Sir, if the edits are authenticated, we cannot ignore them. A colonel snapped that secrecy protects lives. That revealing process risks missions. The room split along an old fault. Duty to protect versus duty to account. The chair tapped once for order. Wood met wood without conviction. I set one more exhibit in the light. The subcontract ledger linking Vale's front to the Special Operations Unit overseas. Dates overlapping the period when Cole had publicly stepped back. He never left, I said. He changed hallways. A murmur moved through the room, some voices sharp, some afraid. Cole leaned in, palms open. Commander, you are reaching. Procurement is complex. Civilians never grasp its nuance. Heat rose. I chose ice. I grasp a funeral. I grasp a mother folding a flag. I grasp numbers that do not lie when people do. I turned to the chair. authenticate the drives, call the archive custodian. If the hashes match, the record stands. A major who had been silent spoke. Sir, I reviewed the hash on receipt. It matches. The colonel frowned. Procedure still matters. The major nodded. So does duty. The split narrowed. Not closed. Narrowed. Cole reached for the last shield he carried. Motive, he said, looking at me. She hates me. She wants revenge. She weaponizes rumor. I let silence work, then gave it weight. I want accountability, not revenge. Revenge cannot restore the dead. Accountability can protect the living. The aide near the door stopped writing, eyes bright. The chair ruled, documents admitted, limited distribution under seal. Independent verification within 24 hours. Cole objected again. Perfunctory. The ruling stood. Small words, large consequence. When the session adjourned, the rows did not move at once. Some officers stood and stared at the seal. Others gathered folders with the care you give brittle things. One young lieutenant stepped toward me, then thought better and stepped back. Courage trains slowly. I nodded anyway. In the hallway, I exhaled. Marlowe's message buzzed. 4 words, hold your line, proceeding. I looked back at the door we had exited. Cole remained inside with counsel, shoulders squared, mouth a straight rule. He would not surrender, but paper had turned on him. And the room had tasted a truth that would not wash out. I walked toward the lit exit. Binder under my arm, heartbeat steady. The spark had caught. Public would follow. And Silverfish would finally speak in a language even the careful could not ignore. The air in the chamber felt thinner after the chair's ruling, as if the oxygen had been divided along the same lines as the people inside. The moment the gavel echoed, voices rose, not in chorus but in combat. On my left, a brigadier general leaned toward the microphone. With the authenticity confirmed, we have no choice but to open a comprehensive investigation. The integrity of our operations depends on it. His voice carried the calm weight of procedure, but his eyes never left Cole. On my right, a colonel in starched blues fired back. Commander Whitfield has violated multiple national security protocols. Unauthorized possession of classified material is a crime, regardless of her personal convictions. He didn't bother to look at me. He looked to the room, recruiting allies. The argument rippled outward. A cluster of majors debated whether my retrieval of the files fell under whistleblower protections. A Navy captain said my evidence was compelling, but warned about the political storm it could trigger. 2 Air Force officers whispered furiously over the chain of custody forms, tracing signatures as if a pen stroke might change their allegiance. Cole sat silent, but his stillness was not surrender, it was calculation. He kept his gaze fixed on the chair, as though the rest of us were background noise. I'd seen that tactic before in the field. Let the chaos burn itself out, then step into the silence as the only calm voice left. Then it happened. A young lieutenant, barely into his 20s, cleared his throat. The sound was small, but it cut through the noise. If she's wrong, he asked, looking directly at Cole, then why are you afraid to look at the file? The room froze for a heartbeat. Cole's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly, and that was enough. The lieutenant's words hung there, simple, dangerous, impossible to dismiss. The colonel sputtered about proper channels and need to know, but the momentum had shifted. That single question had reframed the argument. It wasn't just about me breaking rules. It was about why those rules were being used to shield certain truths. The chair tapped the gavel for order, but the damage to Cole's image had been done. The sides didn't blur, if anything, the divide deepened. But the eyes in the room were different now. Some were calculating risk, others, resolve. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, I knew this was the first real crack in his armor. And I also knew, once a crack appears, it's only a matter of time before the whole wall gives way. The silence after the lieutenant's question didn't last long. Cole's voice came back sharp, brittle at the edges. You have no idea what you're talking about, he snapped. I've reviewed. He caught himself, but too late. The Silverfish disposal, and it was handled within protocol. The word reviewed hit the room like a dropped round in a quiet hall. A few heads turned toward me, others turned toward him. It was the first time he had tied himself, in his own words, to the very program he'd been denying any link to. I didn't move. In moments like that, stillness is a weapon. Let the words echo. Let the weight settle. Across the room, Vale rose from his seat at the back. No side comments, no visible anger. He adjusted his cufflinks, smoothed his jacket, and walked out without looking at anyone. The door closed behind him with a soft click, but it felt louder than the gavel. That was no retreat. That was repositioning. Cole seemed to realize too late what Vale's departure meant. His eyes followed the empty doorway before darting back to me, as if measuring how much damage he'd just done to himself. Around the table, conversation started low but urgent. One officer whispered to another, "Did he just admit?" Another scribbled something into a notebook, underlining it twice. The chair called for order, but control had slipped. I locked eyes with Cole, giving him the smallest, most deliberate nod. I wanted him to know I'd heard every syllable, and that the room had too. Inside, I marked the moment. Cole had cracked. Vale had just decided to move his game somewhere else, and I had less time than ever to get ahead of whatever was coming next. Vale did not come at me with subpoenas or quiet backroom deals. He came at me with headlines. By morning, the largest military-affiliated news site ran a story with my photo under the word defector. The text claimed I had been feeding classified intelligence to foreign actors. They cited anonymous sources within the Pentagon and internal whistleblower reports that painted me as a double agent. Every detail was surgical, just enough truth about my past assignments to make the lies sound credible. Within hours, other outlets amplified it. On base, people stopped making eye contact. A captain I had mentored crossed the hallway without a word. My email access slowed. Clearance requests I'd submitted weeks ago were suddenly under review. I didn't need confirmation to know Vale had pulled the right strings. The real cut came when my old unit commander called. He didn't accuse me outright. He just said, "You understand, Yara. I can't be seen supporting you right now." The weight in his voice told me this wasn't his choice. Someone had leaned on him hard. Even the allies I thought were untouchable went quiet. I understood why. Vale controlled the Military Oversight Committee. His shadow reached into every branch, every chain of command. Backing me now meant career suicide for anyone still in uniform. I stayed outwardly calm, but each severed tie was a calculated blow. He wasn't just trying to ruin my credibility in the investigation. He was isolating me, ensuring that when the next strike came, I'd be standing alone. The lesson was clear. In his game, reputation was a weapon, and he had just fired the first round. Marlowe disappeared for a full day after Vale's smear landed. When he resurfaced, he sent a single line to the secure phone on my desk. "I have a voice. Move now." We met in a borrowed conference room inside a veterans' hall that smelled like coffee burned an hour too long. He was not alone. A man in a faded maintenance jacket sat with his back to the wall, eyes steady, hands folded. "Name is Hale," Marlowe said. "Contract security at the Silverfish storage wing during the quarter that matters." Hale nodded once. He set a small recorder on the table, then laid down a folded document sealed with a notary stamp. "I logged every entry," he said. "I kept my own copies when the contractor changed hands. I never believed the story they told us about those pallets." He pressed play. The audio was a collage of machine hum, boot steps, a lock clicking, the low timbre of a man giving instructions inside a concrete aisle. Then a line that stiffened the air. "Clear the ridge line. No signatures." The date on the recording matched the week my team was briefed into a different set of coordinates. Hale paused the file and slid over 2 photocopied manifests. Both listed the same aircraft tail number. Both were signed by a logistics lieutenant who now worked inside a Vale-affiliated office. "Night of the move," Hale said. "A judge advocate officer came in late with a civilian." I verified the badge block. It matched Cole's range. The civilian used a visitor credential attached to a shell company. They told me to reroute 2 pallets from Rack C to an unlisted bay. Then the cameras went into maintenance mode for 7 minutes. That never happens without someone upstairs sending the request. I studied the entry log Hale had scanned years ago. The timestamp was neat, the handwriting careful, the kind of small accuracy that survives memory. "Why keep these?" I asked. Because the directive felt wrong, he said. Because the civilian never signed the supplemental. Because the officer never touched the paperwork. He only touched the lock. He tapped the photo of a broken seal he had taken with an old phone. I was paid to watch, so I watched. Marlowe took out a thin drive and slid it across to me. Audio is mirrored and hashed, he said. Chain of custody documented. We verified the power fluctuations in the bay against the recording. They align. We also pulled internal ticket logs from the camera vendor. The maintenance change was remote. It came from a terminal inside the legal suite. He let that land. Cole's floor, Vale's orbit. The bridge was finally visible without redaction. Here is the play, Marlowe continued. We bundle the affidavit, audio, manifests, vendor tickets, and the access logs you pulled from the peripheral archive. We file under whistleblower protections and force a closed session in front of the Military Oversight Committee. No spectacle, just verification. Hale testifies under shield as witness lantern. You lay down the operational context without revealing field tactics. I handle process and policy deviation. We request immediate preservation orders on all endpoints listed in the exhibits. I nodded, then raised the obvious risk. Vale owns the public narrative. He will call this a stunt. Then we beat him where he cannot spin, Marlowe said. Hash values, server logs, badge blocks, vendor tickets. Numbers do not care about talk shows. We set a clock. 72 hours to file. 48 to secure court-backed preservation on the legal suite terminals, the camera contractor, and the logistics server farm. 24 to move Hale under a pretext that would not spook Vale's watchers. Harper would lock down the digital trail with time-stamped notarization. Kessler would whisper inside procurement to freeze the usual shredding cadence. If Vale wanted flame and noise, we would answer with ice and process. I built the submission through the night. Each claim stood on a document. Each document stood on a chain of custody. Each chain linked to a timestamp that matched another independent system. The first exhibit was the unredacted silverfish packet. The second, the subcontract ledger tying a Vale shell to a foreign unit. The third, Hale's audio. The fourth, the maintenance ticket from the camera vendor. The fifth, badge access logs from Cole's floor. The sixth, the flight tail matches on the manifests. I added a chart that mapped Cole's presence to decision points. My tone stayed clinical. Where anger wanted adjectives, I substituted citations. By dawn, my eyes burned, but my hands were steady. Marlowe read the packet twice, then again with a pencil, then nodded once. It is clean, he said. File it. We moved Hale before the sun cleared the row houses. He wore a ball cap and carried a plain duffel. He did not thank us. He did not need to. In the parking lot, he paused, looked up as if measuring the sky, then got into an unmarked sedan. Witness lantern, Marlowe told the driver. Route 3. At noon, we used a secure portal that stamps each upload with a clock you cannot edit. The clerk at the counter did not ask questions. The system printed a receipt string and a plain notice. Materials under seal. Distribution restricted. Counsel notified. The notice meant the committee had to read what we placed in their hands. It also meant Vale would feel the ground tilt before lunch. Back in the hallway, Marlowe leaned close. Once their clerks ping the legal suite, Vale will escalate. He already has, I said. I told him about the photo of my mother's house, the caption, the live locator ping. His jaw set and his voice dropped. We keep schedule. Fear feeds on drift. We stepped into daylight that felt sharper than morning. Somewhere in that building, men loyal to Vale were dialing phones and testing alibis. Somewhere else, a young lieutenant was still asking why a judge feared a file. Between those rooms sat a table, our exhibits, and the kind of clock that finally runs for the truth. I adjusted the strap on my binder and walked on. Some wars roar. This one moves on paper, on names, on patience hardened to steel. It hit the net at 03:17 Eastern. A 30-second clip with no watermark and perfect audio, posted from a throwaway account created minutes earlier. The thumbnail showed the edge of a conference table, 2 coffee cups, and a brass lapel pin. I knew the room, a secure breakout space on Cole's floor, the same crown molding, the same scuff on the baseboard where a chair had bitten wood. The camera angle came from a vent, low and left. enough to see profiles when men leaned forward. Cole's voice entered first, clipped and certain. We need to push the transfer before the next audit window, move the pallets, keep the ledger under humanitarian support. A second voice answered, smoother. I recognized the cadence before the name, Reynard Vale. We can compress the timeline if legal confirms the maintenance window. 7 minutes is sufficient, no signatures. The clip ended on the sound of a pen tapping and the squeak of chair legs. No faces, only voices, timestamps, and a file name glimpsed on a folder. SA Logistics Q4. Comment sections ignited like dry grass. Within an hour, the clip was mirrored on larger channels. Some called it a deepfake, others called it treason. What mattered was the pressure it created. Pressure moves mountains when paper alone cannot. I did not release the video. I did not need to. Somewhere between Hale's affidavit and our sealed filing, someone decided truth should not wait for committee schedules. My secure phone pulsed with messages. Harper sent a checkmark. Kessler sent a clock emoji and the phrase, game on. Marlowe wrote, hold posture, let the tide work. The tide crashed fast. Veterans groups demanded an independent special counsel. A retired JAG officer wrote a thread explaining why the phrases in the clip were not the language of routine logistics. They were the language of concealment. The hashtag was relentless. 6 for 6. For the operators we lost, and the 6 points of proof now visible to the public. Vale responded the way men like him always do. Through proxies. An unsigned statement from a civic institute questioned authenticity and warned against damaging trust in institutions. A former contractor went on a friendly show and called me unstable. He mentioned my tribunal and my scar. He did not mention the families who had waited for answers that never came. I recorded a statement and released it without music or graphics. I sat at a plain desk with the binder closed in front of me. I said that multiple sealed exhibits had been filed, that independent verification was underway, that anyone invoking national security to bury the truth was not protecting America. I did not address Vale. I did not say Cole's name. I thanked the young lieutenant who asked the only question that matters when power flinches. The clip moved more than opinion. Staffers at the Military Oversight Committee leaked that preservation orders had been issued to Cole's suite and to a private vendor. Reporters camped outside the contractor's glass building. Cameras pointed at doors that stayed shut. A whistleblower hotline reported a spike in calls. Anonymous posts surfaced describing the same 7-minute maintenance window in facilities 3 states apart. Patterns are patient. Once seen, they refuse to be unseen. Inside the Pentagon, doors started closing. Cole canceled meetings and released a memo about safeguarding process. Vale stopped appearing in public calendars. I did not chase the rumor. I prepared for the part that always follows a public break, the quiet counterstrike. That night I walked past my mother's porch. The swing moved in a mild wind, the kind that sounds like paper turning. Marlowe's team had repositioned Evelyn without incident. I left a note under the mat. Garden safe, call the number on the card. It felt small against the scale of the storm, but small things prevent panic from setting hooks. By midnight, the video had been analyzed frame by people who look at pixels the way surgeons look at scans. Their verdict was not unanimous. Propaganda rarely yields unanimity. It did not need to. The point was not to convict by comment. The point was to widen the lane for oversight, to act without being accused of secrecy for secrecy's sake. At 06:10 morning, the committee clerk issued notice. Emergency session. Witnesses under seal. Exhibits to be reviewed in camera. I reread our packet and added one document, a timeline aligning the clip with Hale's logs, the vendor ticket, and the badge blocks. I left the top line blank for one more addition. The minute Vale walked out after Cole said reviewed silverfish disposal. I did not know if the committee would accept context. I included it anyway. Context keeps a story from being stolen by anyone at all. The marble corridors carried every sound like a drumline. My boots struck the floor in an even rhythm, not fast, not slow. I carried the binder cradled in my left arm. Full chain of silverfish evidence, Hale's sworn statement, the vendor logs, the leaked video transcripts, and a final page. A newly discovered contract authorizing future transactions under a different name. The air in the hearing room was colder than it had been in any prior session. A long table under harsh light, the seal of the department behind the panel, a row of uniforms and suits. Cole was already seated, back straight, hands folded, jaw set. The gold on his shoulders seemed to shine more brightly than the man wearing it. Vale's chair was empty, but the attorney in his place wore the kind of quiet suit that costs more than a captain's yearly pay. When the chair recognized me, I stood, placed the binder in the center, and slid it forward. "This," I said, "is the complete chain of evidence for the Silverfish material transfers, from authorization to attempted disposal. It includes internal communications, shipping manifests, audit trail anomalies, and—" I placed my palm on the final section. A new procurement contract drafted under a civilian logistics shell company. The signatory, Colonel Adrian Cole. Cole's lawyer moved to object. Cole's mouth twitched, but his voice stayed even. "Classified operations," he began. I cut him off. "We have an unredacted record. It's been reviewed by cleared oversight officers whose remit includes this class of program. There is no valid classification to conceal the nature of these transfers." A colonel from the panel leaned forward. "Miss Whitfield, does this chain conclusively tie both the disposal order and the new contract to the same personnel?" "Yes, sir. Pages 63 through 74. I opened to the photographs. Matching initials on two separate signatures. Same ink pattern, same pressure indentation. Beside it, the voice analysis from the leaked clip matched to prior public recordings of both Cole and Vale. Cole shifted. The attorney at Vale's chair cleared his throat, objecting again. Vague language about operational security. It was the weakest pushback I had heard in months. The chair of the panel tapped a pen twice. "Colonel Cole, do you contest the authenticity of these documents?" He hesitated. The pause hung in the air, the weight of it pressing the walls inward. "No, sir, but the context." "The context," the chair said, "will be considered. The facts are entered into the record." I watched Cole's knuckles whiten. This time, no classified curtain could drop over the table. Every page was visible to the right eyes, the ones that actually counted. My pulse stayed steady. This was not victory yet, but it was the hinge on which everything else would swing. The verdict came faster than anyone expected. The panel returned from recess with expressions like stone. The chair's voice was steady. "Colonel Adrian Cole, this committee finds that you have engaged in conduct unbecoming of an officer, abuse of authority, and dereliction of duty with willful compromise of material integrity. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties, stripped of your rank, and your security clearance is revoked." The words did not echo. They landed. Cole didn't flinch at the list, but when the sergeant approached with a small lined tray, his hands moved almost automatically. He unpinned the Chief Judge Advocate badge from his chest, set it down on the felt. The overhead light caught the gold, made it gleam one last time before the shadow of the sergeant's hand covered it. There was no applause, no sound beyond the scrape of the chair legs as Cole rose. The room's tension broke in a slow exhale as he walked out without looking back. The image, the badge under the cold spotlight, burned into the air like a photograph in development. I stayed seated. This wasn't the kind of win you stand up and cheer for. It was a necessary cut, not a celebration. Somewhere outside this building, Vale was still walking free, still holding pieces of the larger puzzle. But for the first time, one of the men who thought he was untouchable had been touched. By procedure, by evidence, by the weight of a system forced to see itself. Reporters would seize on the visual. The gold insignia on green felt, the overhead light, the empty chair. Symbols matter in this town. They tell the public where the wind is shifting, even before the storm reaches their street. When the room adjourned, Marlowe leaned close and murmured, "One down." His eyes didn't celebrate. They measured the space ahead. The hallway outside the chamber felt longer than when I'd walked in. The air was different, less heavy but charged. Like the moment before lightning, Marlowe matched my pace. "Vale's not here because he doesn't have to be," he said. Cole was cover. Silverfish was just the start. We stepped into the outer courtyard where the glass walls of the Pentagon caught the late afternoon sun. From here, you could see the city skyline through the gaps. Monuments, rooftops, the slow crawl of traffic. My reflection looked back at me in the glass, but behind my own outline was another, a faint distortion, like a shadow standing just far enough away to be deniable. Marlowe saw where my gaze went. "Shadow Vesper," he said softly. "He's already moving pieces." I thought of my mother, safe for now but still a target by implication, of Hale, risking everything to testify, of the 6 names etched in the classified memorial book, and of the contract still in my binder that pointed to other shell companies, other shipments, other operations with different code names waiting to be discovered. Vale would read today's headlines, and he would adapt. Men like him didn't run. They redirected the fire. That was the shadow ahead. Not just one man, but an entire architecture built to outlast scrutiny. I turned from the glass. Then we follow him into the dark. Before we say goodbye, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Is it a quiet morning with a warm cup of coffee? Or a late night where stories like this keep you company? Let us know in the comments. We read everyone with gratitude. And if this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to the channel, not just to hear more stories like this, but to be part of a community that still believes in kindness, healing, and second chances. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Wherever you are, we hope you carry this story with you, and remember, sometimes the miracle doesn't knock on your door. It waits quietly until you're ready to open your heart. Take care, and we'll see you in the next story.